Good morning. Welcome everybody to our Aliyah day. I am glad that everybody is with me on this wonderful and amazing morning. It is Erev Hanukkah. So Hanukkah Sameach to everybody. I pray that you have a wonderful, amazing holiday, getting to celebrate this wonderful feast of dedication. It's going to be lots of fun, and I pray that lots of spiritual blessing in your life as well. So glad that everybody is with me today. It's beautiful to see all of you. And today we get to dive into Parashah, the ongoing story of Yosef. We started to talk about Yosef, of course, last week's Parashah, which was, I think, personally, just incredibly deep, incredibly insightful, wonderful. If you did not have a chance to look or listen at the Aliyah day last week, then I strongly encourage you to go and do that. It's going to be really eye-opening. We get to continue the discussion of Yosef. It's so impactful to who we are, to what we believe about who the true Messiah of Israel is, and I think it's going to be extremely eye-opening. I am Rabbi Mordecai Griffin. For those of you who are new, welcome to our channel. Glad you are here. Please be sure and like this video. If you have not yet subscribed, please be sure to do that. We have people who subscribe to this channel on a daily basis. I watch the conversation. It is wonderful to have you with us. I want to empower all of you to be able to invite people to join the Lapid Nation and to join the Aliyah Day, to join the other activities that we have here. And so Zake and Yosef has created a card. And so this is the card. This card is, it says on the front of it, Spark On. That is actually inspired by many of you Lapidniks who have commented on the Aliyah Day, and you said Spark On numerous times. And so when Zake and Yosef said, hey, I want to create a card where people can easily invite their friends and family and strangers and whoever Hashem should lead them to join in with this movement, I said, well, put on the front of it Spark On, because that's what the Lapidniks across the nation and across the world are saying. And then our very own Amet coined the phrase Lapid Nation when he was making his last video. So it says Spark On, join Lapid Nation. And on the back of the card is all of the various links that one can go and see or listen to everything that we do. And then, of course, it has our address on there for the synagogue and phone number for the synagogue as well. So there's the link for our Sar Shalom page, for our live stream for Sar Shalom, and the Lapid Judaism website, for this channel, the Sar Shalom channel, and the Sar Shalom Synagogue Facebook page. So it's really, really good. So I'm showing this to you because if you will send an email to Keturah at mysarshalom.com, then let us know, and we will mail you some. We will mail you some of these cards so that you can be able to hand those out. So just send an email to Keturah. Let her know that you'd like to receive some and what your address is. And with God's help, we will get those to you just as soon as possible. All right, we are on Parashah Mikeitz. As I said, we're in chapter 41. Begin reading in verse 1 for the first Art Scroll Chumash. We are going to be on page 223. So this is what it says. It's talking now. We left off last week where Yosef has interpreted the dreams for the cupbearer and for the baker. And the baker, he said, you know what? You're not going to make it. And so your head is going to roll toward to the right hand of Pharaoh, and you will put the cup in his hand. And he said, when that happens, please be sure and remember me. Put in a good word. When you go up there, hey, whisper in Pharaoh's ear, just want to let you know that there's a guy in the jail, and, it's a good guy. You should let him out. So what happened? He went there, and the cupbearer forgot all about him. So he's in prison still. So this happens now. It happened at the end of 2 years. So this is where we get to Mikeitz, right? It says, Vahi Mikeitz Shenateim Yamim. So it says here it happened at the end of 2 years. Shenateim. Pharaoh was dreaming that, behold, he was standing over the river, when, behold, out of the river there emerged 7 cows of beautiful appearance and robust flesh, and they were grazing in the marshland. Then, behold, 7 other cows emerged from them out of the river, of ugly appearance and gaunt flesh, and they stood next to the cows on the bank of the river. The cows of ugly appearance and the gaunt flesh ate the 7 cows of beautiful appearance and robust. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamt a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain were sprouting on a single stalk, healthy and good. And behold, 7 ears thin and scorched by the east wind were growing after them. Then the 7 thin ears swallowed up the 7 healthy and full ears. Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it had been a dream. And it was in the morning, his spirit was agitated. So he sent and summoned all the necromancers of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh related his dream to them, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh. Hey, you know what? It just occurred to me. I forgot about this guy. It said Pharaoh of acres. He dreamt a dream on the same night, I and he, each one according to the interpretation of his dream, did we dream. And there with us was a Hebrew youth, a slave of the chamberlains of the butchers, and we related it to him, and he interpreted our dream for us. He interpreted in accordance with his dream. And it was that just as he interpreted for us, so did it happen. Me he restored to my post, and him he hanged. So that's the end of our first reading. I want to get right to our insights and share a couple of thoughts. First, I want to begin with just a refresher, if you will. This is from Pituchei Hotam, a refresher that Pituchei Hotam brings down about this. And he says, our sages say, if Joseph had not been sold to Egypt, then Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our father, would have descended to Egypt in iron chains. This is from the Talmud Shabbat 89b. So I just want to point this out because we have to ask the question, why was Joseph, this brother, the one of the 12, why was he having, why was he betrayed by his brothers? Why was he rejected by his brothers and hated without cause and all these kinds of things? Why was it necessary for Messiah ben Yosef to be treated this way? Because as I said last week, the common idea within Judaism, and it's a completely false idea, it's 100% wrong, and it's wrong according to Judaism's own thought process. And that idea is that when the Mashiach comes, everybody is going to celebrate, see every bow down to him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in the case of Messiah Yeshua, that's 100% correct. Because he has already come once as Messiah ben Yosef, that is a suffering Messiah, and has suffered and died for our sins. And he is going to return, and he's going to rule and reign from sea to shining sea, and every knee will bow, every tongue will confess, 100%. That's going to happen maybe soon in our time. But what I'm talking about is the Jewish idea that the Messiah hasn't come yet, and so when he comes, he's going to rule and reign and bring in the 12 tribes, etc. Well, unfortunately, that is not at all the Jewish idea. The Jewish idea, as expressed in rabbinic literature, because that's where we find the concept of the Messiah is in rabbinic literature, actually. which brings up a whole new discussion about why the oral Torah is so important, but I don't have time to go there right now. But the idea there is that the Messiah has to come and suffer. The Messiah has to come and be rejected. The Messiah has to come first as Mashiach ben Yosef and be rejected by who? If we follow the pattern, it is not the nations that reject the Messiah. It's the people, it's the brothers themselves, his close relatives, the Messiah. It's the people, it's the brothers themselves, his close relatives, the question becomes why? Why is he rejected? Okay. So some people are posting like, insights, and I appreciate that very much. But let's stay focused on the discussion, shall we? Let me do the insights, and you just do the listening. How about that? So it says here, our sages say that if Yosef has not been sold to Egypt, then Yaakov Avinu would have descended to Egypt in iron chains. Shabbat. People were exiled there and subjected to back-breaking labor. Now, as I pointed out last week, holy sparks in Egypt. Now, there aren't any Jews in Egypt, so Joseph is not going to go there and tap on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, are you Jewish? Did you grow up in a Jewish home? Do you have a Jewish mother? Have you wrapped tefillin today?" It's not what he's asking. He's going there to find those holy sparks that are contained within Egypt. So the purpose of Messiah ben Yosef being rejected is to go to Egypt, number one, so that the Jewish people don't have to go there in chains, and number two, to find the holy sparks within Egypt. Okay? So that's a very important concept, because we have to keep in mind that the reason the Messiah was rejected by his brothers, the reason the Mashiach was treated as he was so that the brothers would not end up in chains. And what's crazy is that there's an insight, and I don't know if I don't think I got to it last week. I don't recall. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Yes. Thank you, Hashem. Okay, so we know that we, the Jewish people, rejected the Messiah. Okay. We rejected the Messiah. But it was all part of God's plan. Today, however, we, the Jewish people, I'm just talking here, of course, collectively, we believe that the rejection of Yeshua as the Messiah was accurate, was proper, was true, was what God wanted us to do. I'm 100%. We're open to any and all messianic concepts. Might be Nachman, might be Schneerson, might be whoever. We're open to any and all messianic ideas, but that one, absolutely not. 100%. We rejected him, and we were totally confident. As I said last week, we were unequivocal in our denial. That's exactly what the brothers felt about Yosef. The insight from Rabbi Monk says this: when they passed the death sentence on their brother. Now, isn't that interesting? We sold our brother into slavery. Like, the brothers sold Yosef into slavery, but really in Jewish thought, that was as good as killing him. So anyway, it says, when they passed the death sentence on their brother, the sons of Jacob were convinced. They were convinced that they were acting in legitimate self-defense. They remained convinced of their right, and for many years afterward, they felt that they deserved reproach, not for the deed itself, but for the manner in which they carried it out and for their lack of pity. Do you realize that the entire time that the brothers were separated from Joseph, from the point at which, let me put it this way, from the point at which they condemned him to death, up until the point at which he revealed himself to them. During that entire time, the brothers were convinced that their rejection of him as the true Messiah, King, their rejection of him was 100% spot on. They were just a little bit sad that they did it with. But other than that, they thought 100% were right. And I want you to understand, you really need to let this sink in. And you're all very smart people. I know it's sinking in. I'm just emphasizing the point. That it wasn't until the Messiah, because that's what he's called in the Talmud, in the Midrash, he's called the Savior of the world, talking about Joseph. It wasn't until he revealed himself to his brothers that they understood that their rejection of him was inaccurate. And up until that point, they were convinced that they were totally right. Now, isn't it interesting also, as I said last week, that Joseph, even when he was on the throne, and he had everything at his disposal. At that point, FedEx was under his authority. UPS was under his authority. The United Egyptian Post Office was under his authority. He had tweets and text messages available. He could have sent a private message via Egyptian Facebook. He had all of that to his disposal, and yet he did not send any correspondence to his brothers or his father to say, hey, guess what? The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. But who did he reach out to? Who was it? And we're going to learn in this parasha. Who was it that Joseph actively sought to bring into the kingdom while he was in Egypt in disguise? Who was it? And the answer is, it was the Egyptians and everybody else is in Egypt. He actively sought, we're going to find this out in this parasha, he actively sought to convert the holy sparks in Egypt. He did not seek to convert the holy sparks in Egypt. He did not seek to convert the way I think, because Leah asked the question, does that mean that Yeshua will reveal himself to his brothers? Where so-called, and I use so-called in big air quotes, Lapid Judaism, or excuse me, I'm sorry, my apologies, Messianic Judaism has gone wrong, and there's a reason why they went wrong, and it has to do with who they actually are, but I don't want to get into that. The reason where they went wrong is they actively seek to bring Jews to the cross. The problem with that is because their world is firmly centered on the letters of the New Testament and not the Torah, they miss the pattern. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to be, just frank. And the pattern, if you follow the pattern, is that while the Messiah, Joseph, was in Egypt, he was seeking to bring Egyptians under the wings of the Shekinah of God. And only when that started to happen in earnest did the eyes of the brothers get opened. Because think about it. Why did the brothers go to Egypt? Because the father said, hey, there's somebody in Egypt who's providing grain for all these people. That is a euphemism for Torah. And so now the brothers like, wait, I guess we should descend to Egypt and see what's going on and see what we can gain or what we can, if we can get some grain for ourselves. That's the whole picture being painted here. This is why it's so important to understand the story of Joseph and what we as Lapid Jews are called to do. We're called to find the holy sparks in Egypt, and only then will the eyes of the brothers be revealed. Because right now, the paradigm is that this so-called Messiah guy, he's totally Roman, he's totally Greek, he totally leads people away from Judaism and Jewish ideas and Torah, and that has always been the issue. And it wasn't until Joseph rose to power and started telling people, listen, if you want grain, you got to be circumcised. Now, for many people listening to me right now, if you're fairly new, you're thinking, what? This is completely contrary to what I've been taught. I know, which is why you're here. So it says, interestingly, let me get back here. Slika. So much to say about this. There's so many wonderful insights just left over from last week's parasha, and maybe we'll kind of touch back on them through the week, because from now to the end of Genesis, we're going to be talking about Joseph. So there's always points at which we can touch back. So anyway, the Kehol Tumash, as usual, has Hal and Joan from Hawaii. Hal, Joan, please open up a Lapid house in Hawaii and give me a reason to come there and share Baruch Hashem. I'm half kidding. All right, so this is the Kehol Chumash. It says the pattern that emerges from these events, talking about by illusory ascent, descend in order to ascend. This is something that's so important for people to understand. Yes, Dominico, Poland, absolutely. I come to Poland anytime. So it says here, this is something we have to understand, okay? Many times it is necessary to descend in order to ascend. This is the pattern of Yeshua, the Torah. And of course, the Torah is Hashem. That's a whole mystery there. That the Torah and Hashem are one. And Yeshua is the Torah made flesh. A little story popped in my mind here. Many years ago, the Rebbe Tzin and I were at an event. We were at a gala in Dallas to raise money for a hospital that was being built in Israel. And I used to do a little bit of graphic design kind of work, you know. Anyway, used to do a little bit of that. And so they hired me, so to speak, to put together their brochures and literatures for this event. And so I did. And as a result of that, one of the things they did is they said, hey, you and your wife should come to the gala. It was a big deal. They had some big national speakers coming in there. And so they had this hotel banquet, big banquet facility at this really beautiful 5-star hotel. And they had it, the banquet hall literally divided in half with a tape line. And on one side was all kosher Jewish, and on the other side was not kosher, not Jewish, because the event was open to Jews and non-Jews who wanted to support this hospital. So Rebbe Tzin and I obviously sat on the kosher side. And so we were sitting there with a family, a prominent family, Orthodox family. And they were asking a little about who we were, and we were talking and just trying to be respectful and all of that, obviously. But they just kept asking. And so anyway, I'll never forget that the wife was asking about us, and she said, so I don't, you believe like you believe, but well, I don't get it. And I said, listen, we believe that the Torah brings life. And she eyes got real big, and she says, we do too. And I said, and we believe that in the covenants, that we are supposed to follow the Torah because that's the path of life. It's a path of righteousness. And she's eyes big. We do too. And I said, and we believe in the Mashiach. We believe in the final redemption. We believe the Mashiach should come and should gather us all in for the final redemption. She said, we do too. And I said, and we just believe that the Torah became flesh, and that's Messiah Yeshua. But basically, he came to lead us in the Torah because he was the Torah manifest. And the husband stepped in and said, well, we don't believe that. But it was interesting to me because everything was spot on until we got to some of the specifics about the Mashiach, and that was it. Anyway, interesting story. But we see that Yeshua, the high and lofty Torah, made a descent. He came down to our level. Why? To rescue the holy sparks. It's necessary to descend, oftentimes, in order to ascend. Just like I heard somebody on the radio, not yesterday, but last week, and they were talking about business success. And the person was talking about how everybody who's anybody, all of these great big billionaires, whether it's President Trump or Bloomberg or Steve Jobs or any of these people, every one of them at some point in their life have been bankrupt. Everything. He was pointing out that Steve Jobs was actually fired at one point from Apple. They fired him. Or if England sacked him. And yet they rise back. It's almost as if in order to be really successful, you have to have points of failure. And very oftentimes, distinct points of failure. So it's just something to remind ourselves of. Not, again, like I said in the Drash yesterday, that we have to understand that everything that we learn spiritually must translate into every aspect of our life. We can't compartmentalize. So anyway, it says here, the essence of exile, we want to talk about exile. The essence of exile is living under the control of some power that deprives us of the freedom to live our lives as God would like us to. It is immaterial whether that power is political, social, or psychological, whether we submit to it unwillingly or willingly, whether we are physically located in our native country or not. Whatever the case, exile is the fulfilling God's will and following our life's true callings. I just wanted to point that out as we conclude today's Aliyah. Well, obviously, there's so much more to share. We'll get to that through the rest of the week. But Lapid Judaism, in a lot of ways, is living the exile of exile. Now, think about it. We are actually in exile with the Messiah. Think about the brothers. The brothers, at this point, according to common Jewish thought, the brothers who were living in the land of Canaan were already in exile. That means that Joseph, with his brothers, was already in exile. Then his brothers exiled him. So Joseph is actually living in an exile of exiles. And we are right there with him. It's a very interesting concept. And so we have to understand that our purpose in life is not to be of the world, right? We're not supposed to be liked by everybody and be accepted by everybody. God has put us into the exile of exiles because it's only there that we can collect the holy sparks. Lots of deep stuff, but listen, stick with it. Through the week, we're going to develop these thoughts more and more. And if you're new, and if this is new to you, I just want to take a deep breath and pour another cup of coffee in the morning, and we'll get right back to it. Until then, happy Hanukkah. Keep the light burning and have a joyful day and a joyful holiday. And with God's help, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Shalom and blessings.